My name is Fergus McCready and I'm a jazz pianist. I've been playing music since I can remember, actually. I think about maybe 5 or 6, my parents got their first piano in the house and I used to kind of play that, and then started getting lessons and doing the grades. But that really put me off it, actually, so I didn't really start playing properly, I would say, until about age 12 would be when I really started taking it seriously. I always really loved listening to all music, actually. I was really into folk music and classical music when I was younger, but then everyone else was into like all the chart stuff. Whenever I did the graded exams, there would always be like a couple of jazz pieces in there, so you could do like 2 Beethoven pieces and 1 piece that was a jazz thing but written out, and that was always my favourite thing to do. And then eventually my classical teacher at the time said, oh, you should go in this jazz course, and so I went on the jazz course with this teacher called Richard Michael, and it just totally blew me away, and just the way he talked about how fun it is to play jazz and how much musical and sort of artistic freedom there is in it, that was an instant selling point.
I never really enjoyed doing anything until about 2nd year high school. I got into music in the music class. Drumming was the only thing that I could do, and it stuck with me. And then my teacher for the drum lessons was running this jazz band in Renfrewshire, and he invited me to come along and play at it. It was made up of a bunch of high school students across Renfrewshire. And yeah, that's what got me into the jazz. My favourite jazz artist, I would say the Dave Brubeck Quartet, especially the album Time Out, because that just really explored the way of doing jazz. My drum teacher right now, Tom Bancroft, his name is, he learned from Tom Morello, went to America and studied with him.
My experience at RCS was I spent a lot of time in the building practicing. So I was there, I would go through phases of being there when it opened at 9 to when it closed at 10, so over 12 hours in the building. But that wasn't necessarily always practicing there. A big part of it was actually the social aspects of hanging with other musicians, figuring out what they liked as well, playing pool with them. There was a good pool table in the college. And just like making those sort of lifelong friends that I still make music with now. The classes and the lessons, that's like one aspect of it, but being at RCS and making those friends and playing with all those people all the time, that was such a great experience of it. The way that jazz is taught in the RCS, I think, is a little different to a lot of other places. There's like a real emphasis on the tradition, so on playing the authentic styles of jazz that have existed previously, and there's obviously there's a lot to be said for being able to do that as well. And the RCS does have that, but it also has a really big emphasis on composition and finding your own voice, and I think that was a really big thing for me that I really wanted to do. The inspiration for your own music, it's like such a deep thing. There's like so much that you could say. I mean, everything that you listen to in the end kind of influences it, but I think for me a big part of it is kind of folk music, I think, is big for me. And obviously jazz music, but specifically the improvising in jazz music, that's kind of what I love the most. And I'm really into this American piano player called Keith Jarrett, and what he used to do was go on stage and not plan anything. He would just improvise for an hour and a half. I think for my own music anyway, trying to combine that aesthetic of not planning anything and just letting it unfold in the moment with kind of the way that folk music can really make you feel very nostalgic and really remind you of the landscape of Scotland. I think trying to find the space between those two ideas is where I kind of like to make music.
And how would you say your life has changed since the nomination? I think I'm trying not to think about that too much actually in general, because you don't want to let you don't want it to become a distraction to the actual making of the music, you know.
To win the Scottish Album of the Year award, to be the first jazz artist to do that, I was very honoured to kind of lead the charge for jazz music in this country in that way, and then to be in the Mercury Prize amongst all these like sort of more mainstream artists, that was a very surreal experience. So it was amazing. It was a great thing to do. I think Glasgow is, overall, it is a really great place to be for music, for playing jazz. In terms of like the quality of playing is really high. The musicians are really, really amazing. Maybe one frustration that myself and some other musicians have is that the amount of actual like local gigs going on has become a little bit less over the past few years. I think a lot to do with cost of living and a lot to do with COVID, but then that's kind of coming back now, I think, with the Basement Jazz Cafe happening, Garnet Hill, and the session in Butterfly and Pig's still going really strong, and there's one in Block as well. So as more of these sessions come back, I think that's what the scene like needs the most. But I think it's a really great place because, like I say, there's so many good musicians, and it's not. If I was living somewhere like London, for example, where there would maybe be more of those weekly gigs, but I would have to do a lot more of the work that maybe I didn't want to do to kind of keep myself financially afloat. Whereas here in Glasgow, it's much more affordable, and I think people are much more relaxed and much more creative as a result.
I think the jazz scene in Glasgow specifically has resurged a lot. I feel like right now it's definitely on the rise. I'm hearing a lot more about jazz gigs or meetups or anything like that, especially in Glasgow. I think COVID played a huge impact on the scene. It helped and hindered in some parts, like the Blue Arrow Jazz Club in Glasgow shut down because it just wasn't making money. That's one less venue. It was like the big jazz venue of Glasgow. Definitely like COVID played a big impact because a lot of people were locked in. They couldn't get out of the house, so thought maybe pick up an instrument, whether they got into jazz or not. Just the music really took a hit because obviously the live performances can't happen.
Well, it's an impossible question to answer the future of jazz, but I mean, it's impossible to answer. Jazz has changed so much over it's a really new genre of music in a lot of ways. So I think wherever the world goes, jazz generally tends to follow it. So it'll just depend on that, I suppose.